Hi, my name's Giles Pearson. I'm one of the directors of Account Tests Limited, and the purpose of this video is to help you interpret some of our candidate reports for our skills tests. So this video is going to be suitable for our CA or CPA level tests for corporate and public practice, for our part or non-qualified tests for corporate and public practice, for our management accountant and cost accountant tests, and our public sector accountant tests. So we've got one of the reports up in front of us here. This is one of our part qualified reports, but these reports all run on the same format, so looking at this video will help you whichever of those reports you've got in front of you. The first thing I do with one of these reports is look down towards the bottom of the first page and look at where it says time taken. If the time taken says 30, which means 30 minutes, then that means your candidate was still working on the test when their time ran out. If it's less than 30 minutes, you can see how long it was before they logged out of the test. The next page gives you some background, which I'll leave you to read on your own. The page after that is I guess, is the key page. So this shows you where your candidate sits on the bell curve of all the other candidates who are in our norm group. So in this case, Carlos scored 27 out of 40, and that put him on the 87th percentile, which means that he's better than 87 out of 100 part qualified accountants in our norm group, not as good as 13 out of 100. And you can see at the bottom, he achieved that by getting 27 questions correct, 13 incorrect. The tests are quite hard, so the midpoint for many of the tests is around 21 out of 40, so the top of the bell curve. At what level the overall score is acceptable to you does depend a little bit on the type of position that you're hiring for. So if you're hiring for a senior position, it might be that you want to only look at candidates who are, say, in the 50th percentile or 60th percentile or more. So in other words, well into that top half of the norm group. If it's a more junior position, you might be happy with people who are, say, 35th percentile or more, which means that they're still in the top 2/3 of all candidates. The next page then takes us to have a look at how they've done based on the difficulty of the questions. So the questions are graded basic, intermediate and advanced, and you can see here how the candidate has done against each of those. You'd expect, of course, that they will have done better on the basic questions compared to the advanced ones. And one of the things you might notice when you get to here is how the candidate, or if the candidate has omitted any questions, so in other words hasn't attempted to answer them. So you can see on this other example that I've brought up that this candidate omitted 4 questions. It's not possible to tell from the report itself whether they ran out of time or whether they skipped questions they didn't know the answer to, but this second page will often give you what you need to know about that, because if they have simply run out of time, you'd expect that any omitted questions will be spread evenly between the basic, intermediate and advanced sections, whereas if they've skipped questions they don't know, you'd expect that those questions would be more in the advanced area. So the questions load randomly for the candidate, so there is an element of some randomness in all of this, but you can see in the example we've got here, this candidate omitted 1 question at basic, 1 at intermediate and a 2 at advanced. So looking at that, I think it's most likely that they just ran out of time. Most of our candidates managed to answer all the questions, maybe 60%. If they've only skipped or omitted 3 or 4 questions, that's probably not too much of an issue. If they've omitted 5 or more questions, that potentially raises a different issue for you to consider, which is their ability to work at pace. And our suggestion would always be to discuss with a candidate their experience of the test, particularly if they've omitted questions, a significant number of them, before you take them through the report just so that you understand any background to why they, for example, ran out of time. Going back to the other report, so the page after this slices and dices based on the question topics. So in this case, double entry accounting, financial reporting, business analysis, and business budgeting or forecasting. So depending on the role that you're hiring for will depend on your particular interest in any of these particular sections, or it might be that there's one or two sections that you're actually less interested in. But you can see in this case that the candidate did very well on the double entry accounting and the business analysis, but really struggled, for example, on the financial reporting. So that gives you an extra level of detail around what where the candidate's strengths lie. The pages after that take you through each of the questions one by one. So what was the question about? Which section of the test is it in? Was it basic, intermediate, and advanced? And did they get it right or wrong? And if they omitted it, that little circle at the right-hand side will just be a white circle. And then the last page is simply around interpretation, which is what we've been talking about here. So I hope this has been helpful for you interpreting the reports. If you've got any particular questions or a report that you're really struggling with, we're always happy for you to reach out to us. Just send us an email at help@accounttest.com with a link to the report, or forward the report to us, and we're always happy to give you any additional interpretation help. Other than that, thanks very much for taking the time to watch the video.